This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Good evening, everyone, and a Freilich and Chanuka. Thank you for coming and joining us for the learning of Torah Hashem, Be'ezus Hashem Yisbach, B'Shus Mardarasa, Rav Landau, for the use of this beautiful shul, so beautifully situated. Thank you for coming on a Chanuka when everybody is so very busy. And we learned tonight, we just got a sponsor, Mamish, right before the shir started. The shir is being sponsored, Ilui Nishmas Moshe Shimon Ben Yitzchak Aaron. His neshama should have an aliyah. It's being sponsored by a grandchild, by an anikel. His neshama should have aliyah today. Chav Zayin Kislev is the outside. He should have a aliyah in Gan Eden, a lichtige Gan Eden. He should be a meltz yoshem for his family, for all of us, and all of Klal Yisrael. We learn with the tefillah that all those that have been touched by the dreaded machla, known as Yena Machla, and other related diseases, should have a refuah shalema, b'seich shachar Yisrael. All of us and our loved ones should always be healthy. We learn with the tefillah that all those that are waiting their shidduch should find their shidduch quickly and easily. All those that are waiting children should be blessed with zara chayim v'kayama, healthy mommy, healthy baby, parnasa b'revach u'v'chavod, and lange gesuntes yisu shalom bayis. We learn especially from my Rebbetzin, Miriam Liba Bas Devora, that she should have a refuah shalema b'seich shachar Yisrael. So this year I have a practice of speaking about that which I was stirred to think about while I was being Mavisedra from the previous week's parsha. And I'm afraid that I might get carried away about this, since it's also a very powerful Chanuka message. So it's not really off the subject. We learned Mikeitz / Chanuka this week. So listen to this. It's actually a question that should trouble a lot of people. We know that in last week's parsha we spoke about the very, very, very enigmatic story, the drama, the unusual drama between Tamar and Yehuda. So the sad saga starts when Yehuda marries a woman called Shua. Now, she was a Canaanist, which is already strange, although the Targum says that she was a merchant. But the Medrash says that she was actually a Canaanite, which did not please Hashem, and he did not want Malchus Beis David, who was supposed to come from Yehuda, to come from a Canaanist. So that's really the start of the saga, of the drama, which, by the way, it's so interesting that Yehuda would marry a woman, Shua, Shin, Vav, Ayin, that has the same letters as Esav. They have a child, which already is a strange name, which is the same letters as Ra, evil, right? And just like Noach is the same letters as Chaim, right? Is the same letters as Ra. They have another child, Onain, which means grief. And then they have a third child, Shema. So Yehuda gets a great shidduch, the daughter of Shem, the daughter of Mikeitz Melech Shalom, Tamar, and she marries But in the way of the Dor HaMabel, Tamar was very beautiful. And he didn't want her beauty to be marred by pregnancy. So he didn't have normal relations with her. And Hashem said that that's not the way to destroy seed. So died. So then she marries with the fulfillment of Yibum, since was childless. She marries Einan. But Einan also had a reason not to have regular relations, because he said, I'm going to have a child, and it won't be my child, it'll be named after my dead brother. He didn't want that sibling rivalry. So he also didn't have natural relations. And Shiches Arza, which is aggravated also by the fact that you're really not supposed to marry Eishes Achiv except L'Shem Mitzvah. And here he was sleeping with Eishes Achiv, his brother's wife, without doing the mitzvah. So he died too. So Yehuda says, two is already a chazaka. It's very likely this Tamar is a katlonis. So Rashi learns, go home, ad yigdal sheila b'ni, until my son Sheila becomes of age. Now Rashi says, docha isa b'kash. Rashi says, thank you both. Rashi says, docha isa b'kash. He pushed her away because he really wasn't planning to give her, because he held that Tamar was a katlanis, a woman who kills husbands, so he wasn't giving his third son. He already lost 2 sons because of this woman. Okay, so what happens? She's sitting alone in her house, and Shua dies. So Yehuda is together with his friend, Chira, the Isha Dulami, and she removes her big de almanus, her clothing of widowhood. She dresses in silks, in all silks, and she sits b'Pesach Einayim. Yehuda doesn't recognize her because she was always madis b'beis chabeha. So he thinks that she's a woman that's available, and he takes her, and she disappears, and she goes home. In less than 3 months, they tell Yehuda, your daughter-in-law, who's still a Shemeres Yavam, who is still awaiting Yibam, can't marry anybody. She's a Bas Koyen, which is very strict. She's pregnant, Liznunim. The fact that she's pregnant also means that there's no chance that she was an islandist, that still has a din of a katana. She's pregnant. Hara Liznunim. He said, oh, she's pregnant. She's a Bas Koyen. Take her out and have her burnt. So Tamar was very careful, and Yehuda didn't have anything to pay her, so she said, well, give me collateral. So she took his walking stick, his cloak, and his signet ring. So she would not embarrass him publicly to say it's from you, but she sent surreptitiously Lemi to the one whose knees belong to, I'm pregnant. So then Yehuda saw that she was fulfilling Yibam with him, which you could do before Matan Torah, since he didn't give her Sheila. And he said, Sodka, she's righteous, Mimeni, it's for me. And he admitted to having, and like others learn, other Rishonim say, Sodka Mimeni, she's more righteous than me. She had in mind to fulfill Yibam. I had in mind only an action of Znus. That's the story. But there's a big question in the story. A big, huge question, gaping question. And that is, why didn't Tamar, after and Einon died, and Tamar was sent home to wallow alone, why didn't she go to Yehuda and say, look, I think you're viewing me as a katlanis. Let me tell you, it was your son's fault. They never slept with me. They never treated me like a wife. She didn't do this. Now, if you look at the Ramban and the Chizkuni, the Ramban and the Chizkuni learn a totally different pshat in the parsha. Totally different than Rashi. They learn that Yehuda knew what Eredainen did. He knew that they were wicked. And therefore he said clearly that Vayomer Yehuda l'samar kalosei shvi almana beis avich ad yigdol Sheila b'nei, until my son Sheila gets older and more mature, and he won't sin like his brothers. Pen less kiyama pen yomas kamu ka'achiv. Maybe he'll misbehave also. So Ramban and the Chizkuni say that Yehuda was well aware that it wasn't her fault. That's the way the Ramban and the Chizkuni learn. Indeed, Rav Sadia Gaon says that when Tamar awaited by Pesach Einayim, she didn't initially plan to sleep with Yehuda. She waited there and removed her clothing of widowhood because she felt that it was time. Sheila was old enough. But Yehuda felt he didn't mature enough. That was her original plan. So that shot we could understand. But according to Rashi, Yehuda was Docha Yisabakash. He never planned to give Sheila to her because he viewed her as a katlanis. So why didn't Tomer tell him what really happened? Even more than that. After Yehuda slept with her and found out that she was his daughter-in-law, so it says, "V'lo Yosef oid l'data." He didn't sleep with her again. He didn't stay with her. So the Bechor says, you know why he didn't stay with her? Because he still thought she was a katlanis. That means even afterwards she didn't tell him what happened. Now, could be you'll say she didn't tell him what happened because he figured he wouldn't believe her. But if you look at the Paneach Rosa says that when he was with her, he felt that she was still a Basula. Now, if she would have told him, look, I'm not a Katlanis, you don't have to be afraid of me. They were Rishon. One didn't want me to become pregnant and mar my beauty. One didn't want that the brother should have a child for his brother. They were Rishon. Then she could have lived with Yehuda. She didn't tell him anything. Why didn't she tell him anything? There's another pshat that he didn't live with her anymore. There's a second pshat that's put down in the Sifrei. That he didn't live with her because now he knew that she was a daughter-in-law. He didn't want to live with a daughter-in-law. But the Parashas Drochim says that Al Pi Dinei B'nai Noach, before Matan Torah, she wasn't even a daughter-in-law because they never consummated the marriage normally. If she would have told him what transpired, then she could have lived with him. She could have lived with Yehuda. So I want to propose that she didn't tell him because she held that it was Lashon Hara. Look, I don't have a chiyuv to get married. A woman doesn't have a chiyuv for kibbut avei, a period of arivia. I should forever tarnish the reputation of his two sons in his eyes. Oh, I know it's true. That makes it Lashon Hara. I don't want to tell you the Lashon Hara. But it's a toyeles. You're home alone? Okay, I'm home alone. I don't have a chiyuv to get married. I should tarnish forever his two sons in the eyes of the father? Now, because she didn't tell him what happened, she would have told him maybe she would have got Sheila. Who knows what would have came from Sheila? She slept with Yehuda, the daughter of Shem, with the son of Yaakov, and they made Malchus Beis David. Now you have to understand something which is rather remarkable. Contrast the act of Tamar with the act of Yosef. Tamar didn't speak to a father bad about the children, and the result was the monarchy of David and Shlomo and Melech Mashiach. Yosef spoke to the father about his children, the Dibas and Ra, and the result was 210 years of Mitzrayim. 117 years of Kushi HaSheba. It's rather remarkable, this whole story. And I told you I would get carried away about this. very passionate about this. Because the truth of the matter is that this is a great Chanuka lesson. You know, the Rakeach says that there's 36 lights on Chanuka. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 equals 36. They represent the 36 hours that Adam and Chava enjoyed the Oragonas, the hidden light, before they were kicked out of Gan Eden. 12 hours on Erev Shabbos and 24 hours on Shabbos, because Shabbos in Gan Eden there was no night. That's why it doesn't say Vayera Vayivoker Yom HaShvi. There was no night in Gan Eden. 36 hours of the hidden light. That's why you have many people that stare at the Chanuka candles. Because in those Chanuka candles are embedded the Aragonas. People stare at the light. It gives a cheshik for Olam Haba. Remember how great the Aragonas is. The Aragonas is so great. If you think about the pleasures that Hashem allows the Goyim in this world, they're amazing. Amazing place. 6-star hotels on the Riviera with a beautiful woman, with a nice, gentle breeze, a clear blue sky, a beautiful sea, tasty food. Hashem gives it all. A nice sleep. All of these things a guy could have. What can't a guy have? So the light was too good. Aragonas was too good. The Aragonas a guy can't have. So the guy says, what does a yid have to do to be zeichet to the Aragonas? So you'll say, I know what I would have said. And once you told me the guy, I would say, I would say, learn Torah. SR is Begematria Bat Torah. But that's not what the guy says. If you say Torah, then the women might say it's not so eligible for us. To the contrary, it's very, very accessible to women. The guy says for every moment that a person has Lashon Hara to say and doesn't say it, there's zeichet to the Aragonas. You see those 36 candles of the menorah that represent the hidden light. The hidden light is for knowing how to keep your mouth shut. As I said, that's very accessible to women because it says Yud Kav Sicha Yod Elohim. 10 measures of speech came down to the world. 9 were taken by women. Women are very tempted to talk. You watch Tamar. So interesting. We find a woman that slipped up with Lashon Hara, Miriam, a great Miriam. We say, why do we learn? Why we have one of the shkiras is to remember what happened to Miriam. Because most of the villains, people say, well, I don't relate to that. I'm not a villain. But we all could relate to Miriam. Such a tzedekah. And yet she spoke out of turn. How often do we say, well, I'm going to tell my wife what the children did. What's it negaya? She has to know. Does she have to know? Does she have to look at this child differently? Is there really a toelis? Now it's true, husband and wife, they get together because of their children. Rashi learns, when do they become one? When they have a child. In the child is a synthesis of the two of them. That's when they become one, in their child. And that gives them a dveikis, that gives them a connection, because they have a shared interest in the child. That's important. Parents should talk about children. You have to be careful about Lashon Hara. Brothers and sisters that are rivals, and they each want to curry favor in the eyes of the parent and talk to the parent about the other one. Yeah, you know what Maishal is doing. You know what Chaimel is doing. You know what Rivka is doing. to curry favor. Look what happened when Yosef brought a Dibara. And learn from Tamar what she was willing to give up by not telling Yehuda about Aaron Oinen. She had a lot of goods on Aaron Oinen, and she took the fall and was considered a katlanis. It's a big thing by Klal Yisrael. Not talking bad about other people. It really defines us. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'akol niyeh b'dvaro. By the way, once we're on this subject, which is really off the beaten track, there's another big mystery with the story of Tamar. And that is, after she slept with Yehuda, she was a chacham. She was Rayas HaNoiled. She knows what's going to happen when she becomes pregnant. All hell is going to break loose. What's going to happen? She's a Baskayan. She's pregnant. She's a Shemeres Yavim. Why did she wait for the axe to fall? And then at the mercy, if Yehuda would confess, she should have gone right away and said it was me. In private. Before it was Hukarubra. Why did she do that? That's what I would have done. Once it happened, I know what's coming. I know what's in the wind. I'll go to Yehuda and tell him, listen, it was me. She didn't do that. Perhaps she thought Yehuda recognized her. After all, she is his daughter-in-law. More likely, although I can't understand why everybody doesn't ask this question, I can never find this question. More likely is, it says, Vayhi ki mishloish chadashim. She started showing earlier than she thought. She was planning to travel to Yehuda. She wanted to make sure she was pregnant. She didn't even know. If she wasn't pregnant, she has to embarrass Yehuda. But she didn't anticipate that she would have twins. And she showed earlier, so she didn't have time to get to him before the news went around that she was pregnant. That's more than likely what transpired. Although nobody says this except for little old Moshe Meir Weiss. Okay. Let's get to this week's parsha. So you know I have a fascination with names. So the second child, Yosef called Ephraim. Ki Hefrani, because Hashem made me fruitful. Be'eretz Anyi, in the land of my affliction. So here the Chidah cites Rabbeinu Bachya that Yosef gave Ephraim a name after, you have two Zaydas, two elder Zaydas, you have a Sakdation. Who do you give a name after? Avraham, Yitzchak. It's hard to pick. And Yosef said, nobody gave a name after the Zaydas. So he said that Avram put himself in the Kivshin Eish, and if it wasn't for the miracle, he would be Efer. And Yitzchak was on the Akedah, and if Hashem didn't stop Avram, he would have been Efer, burnt as a carbon afterwards. So I'm going to name after Avram and Yitzchak two Ephers. That's Ephraim in the plural. Efer and Efer is Ephraim, after Avram and Yitzchak. So I wanted to learn that this is a little bit of a raya. There's a big tumult whether you should call one child after the name of two parents. So many hold that you should only give a name after one neshama. Yet many have names after, it's a big act of shalom bayis. She wants a name, he wants a name. So you give both names. Make everybody happy. Actually, my own name is an example of that. The Moshe of my name is after my maternal grandma's father, Moshe Weinstock. The mayor is after my father's father, Rav Meir Weiss, who was killed in Auschwitz. Hashem Yinkum Damai. The big Talmud Chacham, a Baki and Shas. So that's Moshe Meir after two names. We see that Yosef gave after two names. It's a clear proof. Achidah. Ephraim is a Rabbeinu Bachia. Ephraim is Efer of Abraham and Efer of Yitzchak. That's Ephraim, the two Efers. But I want to sweeten it a little bit and tell you that if you do a jumble of the letters of Ephraim, it becomes pre-aim, the fruit of the mama. Because Ephraim is also a child of a remarkable mother, Osnas. Now, Osnas also had her own affliction, right? He called him Ephraim, Kifrani Elikim Be'eretz Onyi. But Ephraim wanted to make it clear that it wasn't only, Yosef wanted to make clear that it wasn't only Eretz Onyi, the land of my affliction. My wife had equal affliction. When Dinah was raped by Shem, and posthumous to Shechem's death, Osnas was born, the Shvatim wanted to kill her. But Yaakov took her, wrote a tas, a plate, that says, Ani Osnas bas Dinah bas Yaakov, and sent her down to Mitzrayim. And she ended up in the house of Potiphar. For a Yiddish girl to be a Mitzrayim, it was Eretz Anye. So therefore it was also pre-aim, Kifrani Elikim Be'eretz Anye. And now we come to the name Menashe. Now the name Menashe is really a startling name. And Yosef gave this name first. Vayikra Yosef Hashem Abachar Menashe, Ki Nashani Elikim Es Kol Amali. Hashem caused me to forget all my toil. Oh, did I toil? First in the dungeon, then in the house of Potiphar, a lunatic asylum. But Hashem allowed me to forget it. That's Kol Beis Avi. And all my father's house. The Tata that I was Ben Zakunim, I learned with him all of my brothers, my mother Billah, adopted mother. And Hashem allowed me to forget it. Now that's very strange. Especially since the way he escaped from the clutches of the wife of Potiphar, Eishes Potiphar, is because he saw Dmus Yuknai Shalaviv, that he didn't forget. The tzura of his father was so real. It says Vayetze stands for Yavayar Yosef Tzuras Aviv. The fact that he saw Dmus Yuknai Shalaviv was what saved him. So how could he say now that I forgot my parents? So I asked this question in the past, and I gave an answer that you could only understand this answer if you're a child of a Holocaust survivor. I'm a child of a Holocaust survivor. My father went through Auschwitz. Zichron L'Bracha, Zchusi Yogan Elena, my father, Rabbi Tzvi ben Rameir, Heshi Weiss. He crossed Mengele 3 selections. He saw his chavrusa split in half when a bomb hit the rail and the rail flew up, and his chavrusa had 1 foot on one side, 1 foot on the other, and the rail went and sliced his chavrusa straight through the head. His chavrusa from Cheder fell in 2 pieces in front of him. He lost his father, mother, 4 brothers, and 1 sister in 1 day. And yet when he came to America and he raised us, we had a normal upbringing. Normative upbringing. with him bringing home to us baseball cards to get us excited, taking us as little children to play pinball. Holocaust alive? Because Hashem allowed him to go on. He wasn't bitter. He wasn't weighed down by the burden. Yosef raised his children normally, not bitter against his brothers that sold him, that stripped him, and put him naked in a pit of snakes and scorpions. He was normal. And that's a special siyata d'shmai. That's the Pashup shot, I believe, in Kinashani Elikim es Amoli es Kol Beis Avi. Not that he forgot his father, Rahman al-Litzlan, but he didn't walk around not being able to function, not be burdened by the past. But I saw in a wonderful sefer, you're going to hear me quoting it now more. So I managed to get my hands on an actual sefer of it. Wonderful sefer, Mishchas Shemen, where he brings down from Beis Pinchas that if somebody does you wrong, let's say Ruvain did me wrong. Ruvain's punishment is gauged according to how long I suffer from what he did to me. Fascinating concept. His sin is gauged according to how long I suffer from the pain of what he did. So, for example, if he caused me to lose a job, so if I rebound right away, okay, but if I suffer for that for a long time, so then his sin is much more aggravated. Yosef was happy that he forgot the pain, because he knew that way his brothers would not get punished so terribly. And that was his simcha. What a way to be concerned about brothers. Very interesting way of looking at Kinashani Elikim. But I want to come full circle. What gives a person the ability to continue and not be weighed down by the past? So in the word Menashe, which means that I forgot, Nashani, is also the letters Mishnah. Menashe is the same letters as Mishnah, learning. Because the way to get over the past and thrive in life, even under the harshest circumstances, is through Torah. Lulei seiroscha shashuai ozavarti bani. If not that Torah was my delight, I would be lost. So there he has the secret embedded. What was the secret of the Nashani that I forgot? The secret is Mishnah, is that I learned. The fact that the dream was repeated to Paro twice, ki nochain hadovar me'im ha'elikim u'memaro elikim la'asoisai. That which the dream is repeated twice, with the cows and with the sheaves, because its immediacy is apparent. Rabbi Aaron McCrull from Lodz, or Aaron Krul of Lodz, says an interesting thing. Paro was concerned that what's going to happen is that maybe there'll be 7 years of plenty, and there is a gezeira of a famine, but people will do tshuva. And if there's tshuva, the famine won't happen. And then after making a whole national to-do of putting away all this stuff, it won't happen, and he'll be a laughingstock because of a Jewish boy that he listened to. So Yosef told him that's why the deen was repeated. We know that we learn throughout Shas, Shana HaKosav L'Ikuva. The Torah repeats something because that's the way it has to be. See, Yosef knew, he didn't tell them this, but Yosef knew the Zohar, that here the famine was not brought because of sin. The famine was brought so that all of the world should come to Egypt to buy stuff. And Egypt would collect all the money of the world so that when the Yidden would leave Mitzrayim, they would get all that money and it would fulfill the promise to Avram, V'achrei ken yetzu b'rechush gadol, with great wealth. And the famine was also brought in order to bring Yaakov and his children down to Mitzrayim. Something that without the famine, Yaakov would have never agreed to go down to Mitzrayim. Now, talking about dreams, the Rosh Shiva of Torah Das, the great Rav Shlomo Hyman, Zecher Tzadik Livracha, Zchus Yogan Aleinu, he said, show me a person's dreams and I'll show you who they are. Just like we've learned many times in this share that you could tell a person by who their friends are, you could tell about a person by what they dream about. Shlomo Hyman points out that what did Paro dream about? Fat cows. Paro was a fat cow. They called fat cat. He dreamed about Kashmirs. So what did Yaakov dream about? Malachim, angels. And he said, what did Yosef dream about? The sun and the moon and the stars were bowing down to him. That's the job of a Jew. To be meshabed the world to him. Because the world was created for the tzaddik. Not like the goyim that bow down to the sun and the moon. We have to know, what do we dream about? That we're a hero? What do we dream about? I remember that when I was a orangutan and learning in yeshiva, Yom and Balayla used to dream about learning. I remember going to sleep with a kasha and waking up once with a teretz. If a person's mind is full of shtusim, then their dreams are shtusim. Rav Shlomo Hyman says your dreams can tell you what you are. It's a barometer. And now, listen carefully, because we're going to talk again about a Chanuka theme. Again, I want to thank all of you for coming out at what I know is a difficult time. Now, I can't believe it. I made this Chanuka album that has 8 CDs, walking down memory lane from 30 years of Chanuka Shiurim. We made 199 of them. I think these might be the last 3. I couldn't find any more in the house. I keep on mailing them to different people, and I think it was flying out of my hands. So if anybody wants one, they better buy it now, or forever hold their peace. I mean, not forever. I hope to redo it, but. Vayhi Mikeitz Nosayim Yomim. So this week's parsha has a grim name. Mikeitz. The end. Sounds pretty grim. Mikeitz, the end. All of the Bali Musar and Darshanim say that a great lesson of Paro's dreams is that the dreams of the 7 fat cows and the 7 emaciated cows, the 7 good years and the 7 bad years, is really a symbol, an allegory for Olam Hazeh and Olam Haba. This world is the 7 good decades. We hope to live much more till 120. But this is the 7 good years. Here is the world of opportunity. When we get to the next world, it's 7 years of famine. Can't do mitzvahs anymore. Can't earn anything anymore. Time's up. Time's up. That's why Yofa Sha'achas B'olam Hazeh Mikol Chayei Olam Haba. When the guy was passing away, he grabbed hold of the tzitzis and cried. Because in the next world, you can't fulfill mitzvahs. And therefore, a person has to know to chap time in this world. Because in the next world, it's too late. The Zohar says something scary. The Zohar tells us what our nature is. Inish Ozel, a man walks by Alma in this world, v'chashiv da'avei koiba l'dor, and he feels that he'll be here for generations and generations to come. That's the way a human being is. I have plenty of time. We see all around us. One day a person is here, the next day he has an aneurysm. Next day he's in a car accident. Next day has a massive heart attack. Next day has a stroke. Lo yaleinu, lo yaleinu, lo yaleinu, lo yaleinu. But we see it. But a person doesn't give a moment's notice. They tell over a story from the Stipler that in 1913, a father comes to him and says, "You're going back to yeshiva?" "Yes." "My son learns in your yeshiva." He says, "Yes." "Here's a letter. Could you give it to my son?" "Sure." And then World War I broke out. And he didn't come back to yeshiva for 8 years. But he kept the letter very close to him. He wanted to fulfill the shlichus. 8 years later, they get reunited back in yeshiva. He comes to his friend, whose father had already passed away. And he says, "I have a letter from your father." "Ooh, a letter from the grave. A letter from the Tata. What does the Tata have to say to him?" He opens it up with such excitement. A brief from the Tata. He opens it up. He says, "My dear son, please don't forget when you come home to bring me some herring. Love, Abba." That's the message from his father. Don't forget Dogim Maluchim, the salted fish, the herring. People go through life and they put the emphasis on the schmaltz, on the single malt scotch. That's what it is. Oh, yeah. You have to think about Mikeitz. And that's what I said, it's the Chanuka theme. You know, the children might ask, little children, how come we get such little lights and the Goyim, they have all those big lights and everything looks so pretty and they have these big trees and then we have such a little flickering little thing. It doesn't last for long. And we tell them, because that light represents something that's not in this world. It's not big in this world. Remember, it reminds us of this 36 hours of the Or HaGonos. It reminds us of the light of Olam Haba. And we look at the light, and it's supposed to, by looking at the light, it's supposed to connect with us. There's a skula to connect with us, that we should focus on the next world and not just on this world. It's a very hard thing to do. And that's why Paro understood he needed an Ish Chacham. Why an Ish Chacham? Because you need somebody that's not misled by the 7 years of plenty. And during the 7 years of plenty, thinks ahead, has foresight. That's what we have to be. We have to have the foresight and prepare for the next world. They say over a story of a carpenter that worked for his boss for 40 dedicated years. Then he told the boss it's time to retire. Started when he was 25, he's 65. Wants to spend some time with his family. So the boss told him, I have one more job for you. Could you please do? He wasn't happy. He had already planned. He was going to a beach with his wife, isolated beach. He's going to really relax. But, he said, one more house, okay. But he did the job half-heartedly. He rushed it. He didn't measure things properly. He didn't go looking for the best material. I didn't want to do it last job. He finishes it. He hands the keys to the boss, and the boss looks at him lovingly, and he says, this last job, this house is a gift for you for all the 40 years. It's your house for your retirement. Oh, if he would have known that he's building his house, what he would have done. Person comes to the next world and they see that they're living in a castle that's made by their mitzvahs and meisim tovim. Oh, if I would have known I was building my future, if I would have known. That's the lesson. As we look at the lights of Chanuka and try to absorb the Aragonas, the 36 hours that Adam Mechava enjoyed Olam Haba, Gan Eden, and to think not just of this world, but Mikeitz, to think of the end. It's a big Nisayan. That's why Yavan, Choshech Zeh Yavan. Yavan is everything gorgeous and beautiful about this world, but it's a Choshech. It's a darkness because it distracts us. You see, if somebody is driving and all of a sudden there's a fog, it's dangerous. This world is a fog. You don't really know where you're going. Everything looks, this is fun, this is exciting, but this takes you away from a shir, and this takes you away from a davening, and this takes you away from shalom bayis, and this takes you away from raising children, and this takes you away from kibbut avein. And people are so distracted by life that when they get to the next world, I missed the boat. I missed the boat. Person has to be a chacham. This world is a hallway. I always say somebody has a chassid in Marina Del Rey, and they spend the whole night in the coat room eyeing the different minks. Somebody said, do you have a nice night? Yeah, there were a lot of nice coats. I saw black and brown and gray. It was very interesting. The buttons were very interesting. Yeah, but how was the food? How's the music? What food? What music? He went to Marina Day and spent his whole time in the coat room. He missed the show. Person goes to this world and is only involved in Olam Hazeh. He spent his time in the coat room. He missed the main event. I say a story about a person that did a favor for the king. So the king told him, as a reward, I give you 1 hour in my treasury. You can take whatever you want. So they set a clock, an alarm. He comes in. There's diamonds, there's rubies. He comes in, he says, it's very hot here. Could you get me a fan? So they bring him a fan, he sets it up, he plugs it in, fan doesn't work. So says, bring me another fan. He sets it up and, there's a smell here. I can't take the smell. Could you bring me some perfume? By the time he's finished, he has a few moments to grab a few things, and the alarm goes off. If he would have spent a full hour collecting things, he would have been wealthy beyond, but he got distracted. People go through this life and they get distracted. Petty machloikis, all kinds of things distract them. And what happens? They come to the next world, and it's pitiful. And they see people, unbelievable, the pleasure, the chuppahs, the eternity. And they could have had it. That's the light of Chanuka that we gaze at. I told you once, getting carried away, but this is so important. I told you once that there's a famous question, why does the Torah start with a base? Start with an aleph. After all, the Sefer Sadibur starts with an aleph. Anoichi Hashem Elikecha. Right? Start with an aleph. Aleph is one. So you'll say, well, the word for in the beginning starts with a base. Hashem wrote the dictionary. He could have made the word for in the beginning start with an aleph. And he could have started only Kimbara Bereshis, and then it would have started with an aleph. I know the kasha doesn't bother you so much, but it should. And I'll tell you why it should. Because the Torah is the manual for all life. So the very first lesson of the Torah has to be a dynamic lesson. If you wrote a book, How to Succeed in Life, you'll make sure the first lesson is very, very important. What's the first lesson in the Torah? Why does the Torah start with a base? That's the first lesson Hashem decided to start the Torah. And Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira says in the Medrash, it starts with a base to tell you that there are two worlds. That's the preface, the prologue of the entire Torah. You have to know that you have to run your life that there are two worlds. If you're only running your life that there's one world, then you're missing out on what it means to be a Yid. That's why we're called Yidden, because Hashem created Olam Haba with a Yud, the Gemara says in Menachos. That's why we toast people L'chaim. Not L'chai, but L'chaim. Not just because it's a man and a wife is a unit. That's true. But we toast L'chaim, 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 because we want to drive home the message. Jews are always focused on two lives. And we live our life, and we sacrifice because of that. Now, I want to come back to something I talked about already and put it in perspective. We said Ephraim, who was the one of Torah, right? Remember, Yaakov switched his hands and put his right hand on Ephraim because Ephraim was the man of Torah. Yosef understood when he called Ephraim the two Ephers, the Epher of Avram and the Epher of Yitzchak. Avram would have been burnt in the Kivshan and Yitzchak would have been burnt on the Akedah. Ephraim is Epher in plural. Mesiras Nefesh makes for Torah. You want to have Atzlach in Torah and Atzlach in Olam Haba, because know that that's the VIP status in the next world. It's Torah. Ashrei Misha Bo Lekan v'Talmuda b'Yadai. Or as the Gemara in Avodah Zarah says, La'asid Lava, beginning of Avodah Zarah, that base. La'asid Vava, Hashem takes a Sefer Torah b'Cheikai v'Aimer Kol Misha Asik Ba Yava v'Yital Scharai. Doesn't take a pushka on his lap. He doesn't take a lulav on his lap. He doesn't take tefillin on his lap. He takes a Sefer Torah b'Cheikai. You want to have Atzlach in Torah, you need Mesiras Nefesh. Mesiras Nefesh means I'm going to come out to learn even though it's late and I'm tired. I'm going to go out to learn even though it's going to be hard to find parking. I'm going to go out to learn even though the stuff that we're learning now is not so easy. Serious nefesh makes Torah. What's the raya? Zois ha-Torah adam ki yamas ba'ayel, ein ha-Torah miskayemes ela b'mi shemei misatzme elav. You need the quotient of Mesiras Nefesh to thrive in Torah. I happened to see this in the Aleinu L'Shabeach in this week's Parsha. So I wanted to share it with you, although it doesn't directly relate to the Parsha, but since I saw it in the Aleinu L'Shabeach in this week's Parsha, and it's Nageya every month, and it's a mistake that I think most people make. So I wanted to correct it in the name of Rav Zilberstein. In Kiddush Levana we say, V'la Levana amar shetischadesh ateres teferes la'amusei vaten she'em asidin l'skadesh k'moisa. Now most people read this piece, V'la Levana amar, to the moon, he says, shetischadesh, that it should renew ateres teferes, a crown of splendor. But that's a mistake. Just reading it wrong. The way Rashi in Sanhedrin reads it is as follows: V'la levana amar shetischadesh, and to the moon Hashem says every month to renew. And says Rashi, that's a tiferes ateres tiferes, a crown of splendor, la'amusei vaten, to those that are born from the womb, Klal Yisrael, shehem asidim l'skadesh k'moisa, that are destined to renew also like the moon. So there has to be a comma after La Levana Amar shetischadesh. Stop. Most people read it wrong. Most people read it, La Levana Amar shetischadesh ateres teferes. That's wrong. La Levana Amar shetischadesh. To the moon he says renew. And that's an ateres teferes. That's a crown of splendor, la'amusei vaten, to those that are born from the womb. Shehem asidim l'skadesh k'moisa. They also renew like the moon. Kilule hismamanu. If you wouldn't have delayed, ki ata shavnu bo pamayim, you would have already returned twice. So they bring down a Maisa, true story. This is such a lesson in Chinuch, in many ways. A family traveled from Bnei Brak to Petach Tikva. Now, I'm not from Eretz Yisrael, so I don't know. Does anybody know how long it takes to go from Bnei Brak to Petach Tikva? How long? This is 30 years ago.
No, more than there's a lot of traffic.
Huh? I think it's longer than 10 minutes. I think it's at least 40 minutes. But anyway, the way the story went is that a family traveled from Bnei Brak to Petach Tikva. And as they're unloading, it's a big mishpacha, and they're unloading all this stuff, the father noticed that his yeshiva bacher forgot his hat. And he knew that his son is the kind that without his hat, he'd feel naked the whole Shabbos. Now, on the other hand, the son, knowing how hard his father worked to transport everybody and how he wants to go, and they go away very little, he didn't say anything. But after unloading the car, the father came, draped his hand around his son, and said, "You're missing your hat, right?" He said, "Yeah." He says, "I know you'll really miss your hat the whole Shabbos. So let's go back." "No, Tati, I don't want to make it. Let's go back." The way back, it's right before Shabbos. On the way back, he tells his son, "I want you to know that this is real chesed. The chesed that we do for our family is chesed shel emes. Chesed we do outside we get recognition for. We get quid pro quo. We hope people will return the chesed. But the chesed we do, a tata does for his son. I want you to remember you'll have children one day. That's real chesed. And he told him when the son said, Tati, I don't want to make you. He says, Lule is mamanu. If we wouldn't delay, we would have been back twice already. I thought that it was such a beautiful thing to hear, such a beautiful thing, that a parent teaches a child, you should know charity starts at home. And that's the true chesed. That's why you have people that they're busy with Chinese auctions, and they're busy with board meetings, and they neglect their children. Because what they do for their children doesn't bring them a plaque at the dinner. It doesn't bring them recognition. But that's chesed shalem. And we all know, in the laws of tzedakah, aniyah yercha kaidem, then aniyah beischa mibsarach al tesalem. That's obvious. Now, I'd like to conclude this share in the Chanuka lights. We all know the Beis Yosef Shaila. Actually, if it wouldn't be for the fact that the Svarim got buried, it wouldn't have been known as the Beis Yosef Shaila. He had a schia. Truth of the matter is, when I learned Masechta Shabbos, Ahmed Madlikin, we already had the Taisus Harash and the Meiri. Both the Taisus Harash and the Meiri asked the Shaila, but those Svarim were not around at the time of the Beis Yosef, at the time of the Shulchan Aruch. They were buried. So it became known as the Beis Yosef Shaila. It takes 8 days to manufacture oil, or 8 days for it to get to you. It's the whole Shaila. Was it a 4-day trip there and a 4-day trip back? That's why it's 8 days. Or did they have to wait 7 days to become tar from Tumas Mace and 1 day to make the oil right there? Two pshatim, or it's 8 days. But it's 8 days. So they had 1 jar of oil, so then it's a miracle only 7 days. So why is there 8 days of Chanukah? That's the famous Shaila. And you have the famous answers. One answer is that they split it into an eighth for each night. So even the first night was a miracle. With all of the Shailas on that, how can you light with an eighth? You need to have a share. Then you have the famous answer of the pre-Chodesh. That when we light the first night, we're celebrating the miracle of Rabin Biyad Ma'atim. That huge Syrian Greek Olympic army was felled by one family of Kohanim that knew how to do Kemitza but didn't know how to shoot an Uzi, or in that case, throw a spear. So that the first night we're lighting for the miracle of the victory. That's what the Pri Chodesh says. The question is, what does that have to do with a flame? What are you lighting a candle? It's an nitzachon, it's a miracle, but how is that represented by the candle? So I saw in a Sefer Bas Ayin a marvelous thing. We know that the battle cry was Maccabi. And Maccabi stands for Micha Moicha Ba'elim Hashem. Want to hear something incredible? Micha Moicha Ba'elim Hashem. Okay, admittedly spelling Chamoicha with a Vav. Micha Moicha Ba'elim Hashem. Remember, Hashem is Yud Kei Vav Kei is 26. Is exactly the Gematria 250, which is the Gematria of Ner. That's that extra candle. That extra candle is reminding us of the Maccabi. And by the way, the battle cry of Micha Moicha Ba'elim Hashem is a forerunner of the Magen David. Both are the same sentiment. David's emblem was the 6-sided star, which is Echelaman Lamata V'Daled Ruchos, is Hashem. We do battle with Hashem. Micha Moicha Ba'elim Hashem is the same thing. We don't put our trust in our might. We put our trust in the might of Hashem. You have the Pshat, that the first night is for the finding of the Pach. That Pach, that not only was there, hidden, because Hashem made the refuah before the market, but according to the Chassam Sofer, it was riveted to the ground with a seal. Because if not, even if it was sealed, it would become tamei with hesed by being moved by a guy, which is metamei b'hesed, by moving it. So it was not only sealed with the seal of the Kohen Gadol, but riveted to the ground with the seal, that it wasn't moved. That Hashem made it that should be there, the refuah before the market. It's a tremendous, tremendous miracle of the first day. And it's a big hope for those battling diseases that are praying that Hashem should be borei refuahs, that they should find that pach of refuah. Then you have Rav Moshe's pshat, that the first day is a symbol of the miracle that oil lights. So you'll say oil lights isn't a miracle. It is a miracle. It's a miracle that we're used to. It's what Rav Miller used to say, that if you tell people that on 14th Avenue and 48th Street is growing apples with wax paper around it, everybody would go and say it's a miracle. He said, believe me, the peel is a lot more miraculous than wax paper. The peel that is perfectly measured to be hard enough to stop a worm from penetrating, but soft enough not to break our teeth. That's water repellent. That has a taste indicator that changes to a color that's pleasing to the human only when it ripens. That has a trigger mechanism that it knows that the human can't reach it, but only falls off the tree when it's good for the human stomach. That peel that is full of nutrients and is delicious too. That's a bigger miracle than wax paper. But it's something that we're used to, so it's not a miracle. Rav Moshe says the first day is the miracle that oil burns. It's also a miracle. When we say in Maidim, al nisecham, al nifleisecha, shebechol yom imanu, and people wonder, what, every day I have nisim and nifleis? I have miracles and wonders? Yes. The heart pumps, the kidneys cleanse, the liver refines, the adrenal glands excite. It's all miracles. It's miracles that we're used to. That's the first day of Chanuka. I always think it's a miracle that you come out to this year. I really do. So nice. People watch, people listen, people even buy the CDs. I want to wish all my listeners a freilich in Chanuka, a lichtig in Chanuka.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.